to working on stuff real quick. All right, so we have our field, right? We got our orange goal over here, blue goal over here, right? So the first thing where we want to start is defending, because that's really where your attack starts. If you have a proper defense, then you can make a nice attack and go on. So essentially, you have 3 players: defense, mid, attack, right? So the best idea and kind of the most basic fundamental idea is you have kind of 3 arcs that you play. You have your defender who's in the arc of the goal. You have your midfielder who's kind of in that, just outside the goal arc. And you have your attacker who's out creating the pressure. So defender right here, mid right here, attack right here. There are a couple of things as we go through where I will mention that two players could actually swap their roles. And here in kind of the defense, the defender and the midfielder, depending on your team comp, can actually swap up. So let's say you have Cap here in the defense, and in your midfielder you're running Acrid, right? Acrid is a very good goaltender as well as Cap. Cap's pretty much relegated to the goaltender spot in most high tier games, so he will always be the defender in that spot. However, if you have Acrid in your mid, this might change. You might be able to add more characters once they start adding more characters and there's more defensive mind characters. But if Acrid, say, has his rage up and Cap does not have his wall up, you swap these two, because you want that rage there in case, say an ability combo comes in or something like that, so that Acrid can just pop his rage and boom, you're safe, right? And then Cap would obviously be playing the mid, where he's kind of covering, tackles, making sure that if the attacker tackles somebody, the offensive player tackles at somebody and gets juked through, he's there to make the subsequent tackle and then throw it out to the attacker and we outlet. So if Acrid doesn't have his rage too, you got to make sure your Cap's there, your normal defensive player is there. So that being said, once you have the ball and you kind of get a little bit of breathing room, we're into what I like to call the outlet phase. So I like outletting to the top or the bottom and then moving from there. So if you say send it to the top, the defender grabs it, throws it up to the top, runs up there to get it. Let's say they put some pressure on the front side. So like coming in like this, right? The defender can immediately outlet it out to the midfielder. And you start pushing up. You kind of push up. If they double commit, kick it out to the attacker who's trying to make an opening for you to get it out quickly, and then the attacker just takes it 2v1 or 1v1. And most attackers can take a 1v1 at this part of the field and just explode to the goal. So that's kind of where you're sitting at there. If they're not creating any pressure at all and kind of they're just sticking around the attacker, the defender and the midfielder just slowly push up, walk it up, don't waste any sprint, stay kind of, equal, so that they can kind of cover if the other one gets pressured and gets attacked, things like that. And there's always that outlet pass to be had. Once you get to midfield, this is where your offensive transition starts. This is also where if you get scored on, where you're taking the kickoff from. The defender, in my mind, should always take the ball on a kickoff. Enough said. There is enough room once you get to this midfield point that the defender can keep backing up and still make a good pass if he gets pressured by a Shawnee or a Schroeder or something like that. They just have to be smart enough to know, I need to be this far away from them if they're going to, if Shawnee's going to use electrobatics. If they're going for the spear, most of the time spear is a goal anyways. So they have to hit the spear. As soon as you see the spear come up, that's usually when the defender should decide to make his throw. Just immediately. Even if it's just straight up down the field to nobody, he needs to make the throw at that point. The midfielder and the attacker need to be making moves to get open. And that's kind of like that midfield transition. So you've brought the ball up to midfield, and now you're starting to go on your attack. So at this point, the defender has the ball, or maybe even the midfielder has the ball. You never really want your offensive player, your attacker, your striker, to be having the ball because they're the most explosive. They're going to get down the field the quickest. And typically they have really noodle arms. So you don't really want to have the noodle arms going at it, throwing it. So you either have your cap or you have your midfielder, 2-star power, 3-star power, boinking it out to either the midfielder or the attacker, or if the midfielder has it, the defender. So that being said, let's talk about the attack now. And this is something that the team I got brought onto has a real bad time with doing, because a lot of times our midfielder, not gonna actually name a name, sits in this area a lot. Sits in this area right here. That's bad. The midfielder needs to be up further. Your midfield and your attacker, your striker, need to be comboing to make goals. At higher tiers of play, you're not going to get a lot of just the attacker going in and getting the score. Yeah, it can happen. They can make a huge outplay. A spear from Shawnee that's up every 72 seconds, unless you get a pickup. Yeah, that can happen. But most goals in high tier play are going to be just kind of comboing stuff. So you have your midfielder typically has the stronger arm, can zip it by people's heads. Your attackers have a lot of those displacement moves, such as swap or Schroeder's damage move. Schroeder's damage move has like a 3-second stun on it. So you just pop up right at the goal, clear shot in. Swap, you hit them, they fly back, clear shot in. Shawnee can do electrobatics right into the goal. That's a nice 2-second stun. Right into the goal from the midfielders, shooting it right in. She also has her spear that can work as well. Throw the spear. She'll be sitting more even with the midfielder. Midfielder passes it, boom, into the goal. So the midfielder is kind of the one you want for the most part on your attack, handling the ball. Especially because if you're playing to line up a tackle, so we see A here with the line here, the dashed line. The tackle throw is a lot more effective if it has the 3-power arm behind it, because the tackle stuns don't last long, so you want it to snap and go in. When you're talking about Shawnee or Schroeder, they have noodle arms. It can still work, but the window is much smaller. And you really kind of want the midfielder taking that shot. So generally, you want the attacker doing the tackle with the midfielder shooting, simply because of the speed of the throw. I mean, these two positions can be alternated as well, depending on how long you're in there. So let's say, the attacker runs out, takes the ball, midfielder goes up, does the tackle, attacker gets the throw. That stuff is very interchangeable, but the best scenario that you can be in is the midfielder shooting while the attacker is doing the tackle. Midfielders also have a lot of good displacement things. Elika's cage is really good for just trapping a defender or two right on the post so that half the goal is wide open. The shield for Elika, not so much. The shield kind of the stun doesn't last long enough unless you actually dink it past them and hit the back of the goal, and it comes back and hits them again, and then that's a good kind of setup there. When it comes to Lachlan, the slam will push people directly back into the back of the goal, and his war song can slow people down. That's more of a transitional type move to use. I would use it mainly in transition. And then Acrid Spit, if the goalie is away from the goal, you can use that spit to slow them down and keep them from getting in goal for the defense. Spit is a really good offensive weapon to actually use as a midfielder. So that's basically the attack. That's what you want to be doing in most cases. As we move along, we have the back transition. This one is something I don't see a lot of people do more or less properly, simply because a lot of times, it's just, we're going down that way. Now we're going down that way. Now we're going down that way. Now we're going down that way. So people use a lot of sprint, and we'll kind of get to that in a second. So I've actually added the opponent's positions on this as well. So what you want to do when you're in kind of a defensive transition, when you're heading back towards your goal, is you want to cut off the passing lanes. So the defender, or whoever has the ball, is going to be trying to move up with it. That's fine. You just want to make sure that they don't have a decent pass. And a lot of people, when they get past the ball, will tackle into it. So you can actually use your tackle to counter tackle them once they catch the ball and then go downfield. The greatest part about this is if there is an errant throw and you happen to get it, you can take it right back 2v1. And it can be a score a lot of the times. So one thing to remember about transitioning is your stamina. Your stamina, your stamina, your stamina. Whenever you're tackling, whenever you're dodging, whenever you're using an ability, let go of your stamina button. Additionally, when you're in this phase where you're transitioning back, or even when you're transitioning forward, you can use your tackle to supplement your sprint. So you use your tackle, it pushes you in the direction you want to go. You let go of sprint while you're tackling, and you gain like a small sliver of stamina most of the time, just from doing that, as well as getting further down the field. So I suggest always in transition, in a full transition mode, always use your tackle. That is the most important thing about kind of preserving your stamina, because when you're in this transition, you're not going to need stamina as much, because you shouldn't be using stamina to block kind of passing lanes. You can kind of walk and hit those angles. It's simple geometry. It's simple geometry. If you're right here and they're right here and they sprint to move this far, literally you have to move half the distance. Half the distance that they have to. So while they're sprinting, you can be walking. You don't have to sprint. And if that pass comes out, you can tackle to grab it. So don't be using your sprint as much in transition. Use your tackles to get back or forward a lot of the times. That will conserve sprint for when you're in the defense or when you're in the attack. And that's just kind of the very simple transition stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and shut that off. Don't save. And let's get back to Steel Circus staging, guys.